And thanks for tuning into our leadership podcast series on India AI, where we give you a glimpse into the workings of successful tech leaders, their eureka moments, their tribulations, and so much more. Today, I have with me Amit Sharma, CEO and co founder of Shopx. Shopx aims at transforming retail by blending the online and offline models of commerce as we know today. In fact, Shopx is India's leading digital offline business, doing a business of over 6,000 crores annually and across 500 towns. With the goal of creating a platform like Shopx, Amit stuck to the core tenets of his business philosophy, focused on the potential of Kirana stores in Bharat or Tier 2 India as we know it. In his previous life as an engineer, Amit held two international patents in the areas of artificial intelligence and cluster computing. He holds an MBA from the University of California, Los Angeles, or UCLA, and a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. He's also started two successful nonprofits in the past to educate underprivileged children. In addition to that, Amit is very passionate about science, tech, teaching, and human advancement. And I think it all sort of comes together very beautifully in the form of his endeavor, which is Shopx. So thank you so much, Amit. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Lovely to be here, Sindhuja. Thanks for that.
So, first off, Amit, I mean, our listeners would love to know a little bit more about what Shopx is really sort of doing. So, tell us a little bit about the company first, and how did it all really come about, and why did you decide to specifically go and help out Kirana stores?
Sure. So, I mean, some background to this is that, there was always a desire to contribute to, developmental goals using technology, right? How do you impact the lives of hundreds of millions of people in a positive way with deep tech, which, I was good at and we are good at as a company, as a team. So, uh, around 2014 timeframe, after I had come back from the US after spending some time in Silicon Valley, we began to have a realization that the digitization of a small store probably represents one of the biggest opportunities for progressing digital retail in India, bringing the benefits of technology to the next 400 million people, and that these small stores uh, today contribute to about 90% of the Indian economy, and they are here to stay. What they lack is access to tools of modernization, a modern supply chain, direct connections with brands, the ability to use data, data insights meaningfully, the ability to connect to consumers. So we felt that if you could inject them with what we call a retail operating system, which can help them digitize their business, uh, it can be great for them and great for the country.
Yeah, I think that's a very noble thought, honestly. And I think bringing in the technology aspect is what makes this entire journey so challenging. So, about a little bit, a little bit about that, the use of artificial intelligence to manage and organize inventory. Really, how does it start, and how does it, really function from end to end? And who are the major stakeholders in this entire, AI journey, as you would see it?
Mhm. So I think the first thing is to really lay down the digital infrastructure and the communication pathways between different people in a value chain, right? So today, information is the central commodity that we all deal with, right? Data or information is what AI and algorithms act on. But unless this information is digitized, AI and algorithms are not very helpful, right? Data is what the currency of AI. And so the first thing was really how do you connect brands and sellers directly with these small stores using a digital pathway, right? What we call our marketplace, right? And that was a difficult job actually because while small businesses and small retailers or retail owners in India are using technology for content and communication. They're watching videos online, they are using WhatsApp, they are on Facebook, a lot of them, but they are using almost zero tech for the third C, which is common, right? And so our first job was that how do we give them a compelling piece of software which they can use with ease, which works in their local language, and so on. And once you develop that digital habit of using technology for commerce. They can then be connected to brands on one side and consumers on the other,
Yeah.
using this information pathway. Once you have digitized information in the system, you can do AI on top of it. That's the starting point.
Okay, and I think this might have been a moment of reckoning for you. I think during this last past 8 months, Kirana stores were literally the silent warriors during this time. Major retailers failed to deliver essential goods. I personally experienced that myself, and I was for the entire time of this stringent lockdown, I was completely reliant on the Kirana store in the neighborhood where I live. So how was really this period for you in terms of the manpower, the tech upgrades, the inventory across different cities? How did you really manage this? And it would be great if you could supplement this with some numbers in terms of how it all fell in place as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we saw that the small retailers relied on Shopx a lot more during the COVID time. The traditional supply chains had either broken down or were severely impacted. A digitized supply chain generally tends to perform better in difficult times. So we saw a massive uptake. I mean, just to give you an example, the retailer sign up rate increased by 40%. Um, we saw a significant, about a 60% increase in the average order values placed by retailers on ShopX. Um, we saw ease of adoption. So, the ease with which we could sign up people, there was a lot of incoming interest in ShopX. So clearly, I think this is the time which can put the digitization journey ahead by, I would say, at least 3 years. Last six
Definitely.
months in my mind has accelerated the adoption of tech by small businesses, but also by brands by at least 3 years. So yeah, we have seen a number of changes to that effect.
Right. I mean, it was also not a time that people were prepared for. I think literally we had no notice getting into such a stringent lockdown, and India ended up having the most strict lockdown, of all nations put together. So really, how was the shift really? What was the time and mood really like at ShopX in your tech team when this happened?
Well, we were also caught by surprise. This whole thing sort of, accelerated all of a sudden. I was actually in London when this was happening for a visit, and I came
Okay.
back in just in time. And you know, the first thing that we realized is that the next few months will require deeper tech and more product innovation. So,
Yeah.
in fact, if there's one thing we have focused on in the last 4 or 5 months is actually accelerated our tech and product investment and how
Right.
much work we do. Um, we also decided to expedite our consumer platform, actually, which connects these retailers to consumers, right? And that was built very quickly. I mean, within a month and a half, we were able to launch it. This allows retailers to get extra business by connecting with their consumers. So we built that fairly quickly, and that's been incredibly successful. So I think it was doubling down on tech, realizing that everybody from brands to retailers would actually have a hunger, and consumers would have a hunger for more technology to be able to talk to each other remotely
Yeah.
and so on. Another example of this is, for example, digital demand generation. Traditionally, uh, brands rely on salespeople to visit stores and collect demand, right?
True.
So
True.
that's how the Indian economy works. We have lakhs and lakhs of human beings visiting lakhs and lakhs of stores every day and collecting orders. And during the pandemic times, obviously, this was all disrupted. So
Yeah.
suddenly, for a lot of people, the only way to generate demand was digitally. And so the app became like a digital salesman, and retailers could just punch in the orders, and without requiring a salesperson to come. Uh, as a result of this, actually now we are working with many leading brands who have now decided to actually do away to a certain extent or to a large extent with sales and rather rely on digital demand generation. So
Yeah.
many of these changes.
Okay, that's a very
Yeah.
interesting time, no doubt. I think it's been a very interesting time for businesses, and a lot of them have actually used this, this time of pressure to really pivot and move their tech as fast as possible and mobilize it. So I think this is a great example of that. So your recent collaboration with Omnipresent Robot Technologies, can you tell us a little bit about this, and how do you think this would really change, e-commerce deliveries, and more so, do you think tier two markets are really ready for this tech?
Mhm. Yeah, so look, I think there's several interesting and fascinating things about drones. One of the interesting aspects is that they are ultimately electrical vehicles,
Mm,
right? And that essentially means that the cost per kilometer of
mm,
an electrical vehicle, whether it's a car or a drone, is actually much less than that of a traditional internal combustion or fuel-driven vehicle, right? And so, for a given distance from point A to point B, it actually costs about a fourth, about 25% to
mm,
move, like let's say a 1 kg parcel using a drone,
mm,
which is, let's say, surface transport. Okay. Uh, that is the fundamental economic transformation that drones can bring about. Of
mm.
course, the second is speed, right? That they can fly straight line distance. They don't have to follow, roads, and therefore, it can have a significant drop in, like, you're not stuck in traffic, and
Yeah.
don't have to navigate the overburdened road infrastructure, right? In most of our urban centers.
Yeah.
uh, the question really is, where do we use drones, right? And
Mm,
our belief has been that they will be first made mainstream in B2B supply chains rather than B2C.
mm,
And so, concretely speaking, what we imagine happening is that we can have like a central warehouse at, let's say, the edge of Bangalore, right? And it can basically feed multiple nearby towns
mm,
using a drone service, something that we call air train, right?
mm.
And there's actually multiple drones flying at the same time, providing, let's say, every half an hour, a drone service, much like a metro system.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah.
So even if you miss a drone, the next drone is just half an hour away, right?
Mm, mm,
So establish this air train system, which provides the uninterrupted supply chain between, let's say, a urban center and a suburban center,
mm,
right? Now, what that changes once you build this really fast and cheap supply chain is that the stores in the suburban centers, like a town like Kolar, which is, let's say,
mm,
50 kilometers away from Bangalore, right?
mm.
The stores don't have to stock too much inventory,
Right.
right? They can do what we call inventory-less sales. They
Mm,
can sell products which they don't have, and
mm.
the products will be delivered within half an hour to 45 minutes in just-in-time mode, right?
Right.
And this changes everything. I mean, the problem in retail value chains is fundamentally one of inventory.
Mm,
The fact that you have to replicate inventory at every consumption point,
mm.
and it costs money, and when a customer comes, you don't have what he needs. Uh, I think the ability to really rapidly and cost effectively supply inventory from, let's say, a major urban center to nearby places will completely change retail value chains.
Okay. All right. So, sticking to, I think, the tier two or three India, which is sort of like the focus right now of our conversation. What do you think about their progression in terms of digital awareness, and how are they really sort of playing a big role in bringing those next billion users online? What are the typical on-ground challenges, that you encounter, and how do you really plan to address them?
Yeah, look, I think one of the one of the principles that we have believed in for tier two, tier three India and the next billion people is that it is actually the digital infrastructure which can speed ahead of physical infrastructure, right?
Hmm.
So one way of modernizing tier two, tier three India is to build deep physical infra, like schools, hospitals, highways, right, power infrastructure, right, and so on. Uh, the good thing is that we live in a time when digital infrastructure can actually relieve the burden on physical infra. So, for example, we've seen this remote tele-education, which we are now quite familiar with in COVID times, can reduce the burden on classrooms
Yeah.
and physical schools,
Mm.
right? Teleconferencing, like how what you and I are doing, can relieve the burden on us getting on a road and traveling to meet each other.
Yeah.
So what we believe is that India can actually do this generation skipping
Mm.
of infrastructural development by
Mm.
replacing a large part of physical infra needs with really cutting edge, best in the world digital infra,
Mm.
right? And that can really allow us to gain like 10 years every year, right?
Yeah.
So if we're like
Yeah.
50 years behind a developed economy, we can actually get there much faster
Yeah. True.
by adopting. So I think that's the core idea. But more specifically, I would say that certain key things are very key to this transformation, right?
Mm.
One is that we have to begin by realizing that India is India. India is not China or the US,
Yeah.
and therefore we have to build tech for India and in India, right?
Yeah.
A key aspect, for example, of that is language localization,
Yeah.
and
True.
I don't think enough attention has been paid to that. I think use of AI techniques in data transformation, in all aspects of problem solving and decision making, I think
Mm.
should be taken to the next level. Um, I think that the software that we build for Indian customers has to be done differently,
Mm.
especially the India 2 customers.
Mm.
We have learned so many insights about how they have different expectations from the India 1 customers,
Mm.
right? And so I think all of this is really key to building that smart digital infra, which
Mm.
can really allow us to speed ahead.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm glad you touched upon language. I think, rural semi-urban India honestly provides massive opportunities for AI to scale because of the very diverse language landscape that exists. So how are you really capitalizing on this? And, are you using specific NLP, intake language services and solutions to really service and, help your clients better?
Yeah, I'll give you an example, right? So one of the things that we learned is that a lot of our retailers actually don't like typing, let
Hmm.
alone typing in English,
Hmm.
right? So if you imagine, uh, like the options for a user are he or she can type or speak.
Hmm.
So there's voice versus text,
Yeah.
and there is English versus local language, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
One of the interesting systems that we have built
Hmm.
is one that allows the same piece of content, let's say a product description,
Hmm.
right? Let's say we are selling like a mobile phone, right, or FMCG product.
Hmm.
The, the retailer can read that description in 7 different languages, or he can press a button and listen to the description rather
Okay.
than having to read it.
Right.
And we have found that a lot of people in smaller towns prefer to use voice for both input and output.
Okay.
They are not big readers. They
Hmm.
want to come out on books, right?
Yeah.
It's not. So I think the ability to transform the same content both into voice uh, as well as the local language really improves the ability to engage them meaningfully.
Agreed.
However, it's a friction in adoption, and
Hmm.
then the common complaint that you see tossed around is that they're not ready for tech.
Yeah.
And we believe as engineers that it's always the tech that has to be ready for people,
Yeah. That's
right?
true. Yeah.
So I think that's an example of how one really builds smart products
Hmm.
for the Indian audience, keeping their unique needs in mind.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, I think. And I just want to wrap this up with one a question about India too. I think you that's an interesting way to refer to the new brand or the new set of customers that you're really catering. So, what are the top five qualities that you think really truly define India two today? And what are the say five misconceptions that India one has about India two?
Well, I think misconceptions wise, I would start with that and say that I think a top misconception is that they are not ready for technology.
Mm.
Right, as I mentioned, I think as engineers and designers, it's our duty to and a challenge for us to build systems that they can consume. And I think if something like the smartphone is one thing it's demonstrated, it is
Yeah.
that everybody can use technology.
Yeah.
And you have illiterate people using the smartphone and the and apps on top. Uh, so I think the first is to really make sure that we don't think of them as technology laggards. I think the second is about consumption.
Mm.
Often in especially in the retail space, they are not considered, uh, you know, like uh, like a lucrative consumption market.
Mm.
While the reality is that that's where most of the economy lies. What we have to do is to aggregate it using tech again,
Right.
right? So typically, a lot of new brand launches, new product launches are focused on the top 10 cities,
Yeah.
right?
Usually. That's right. Yeah.
Usually for most of the, whereas it doesn't have to be the case, and
Mm.
there's a huge market untapped in these locations. So those could be some misconceptions. I think some of the unique things about this space is that it's actually a massive opportunity space. I think
Mm.
both tech companies, retail companies, uh, just because they haven't really used technology, I think there's an opportunity to build the right tech,
Mm.
right business models from ground up.
Yeah.
I think of India one honestly as an overserved and
Mm.
overcrowded market, and
Yeah.
there's
I agree
already
with you.
too much tech, too many businesses, too much capital chasing the 20, 30 million people,
Mm.
right? While the 400 million people, which we call India 2, are actually starved of good business models and good tech. So I think I would urge the Indian tech community, all the young engineers, designers, entrepreneurs, to really take time out to understand the next million users in India, in Asia, and I think the unique aspect of this whole story is that India can really show the way to the rest of the world. I think that the technology and the business models that will be built for India too, including use of AI in the right way,
Mm.
can actually then be easily exported to a lot of Southeast Asia, countries like Philippines, Indonesia, a lot of Africa, LATAM, and which is also a personal desire for me, that in India we can build global product brands that can then show leadership globally.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned all of these varied markets. I mean, do you see a lot of similarities in demographic behavior and consumer behavior as well?
No, there are infrastructural similarities.
Right.
However, I think this is why building a smart AI layer is very important for localization, right?
Right.
So I'll give you an example. Today let's say we have 1 lakh, we have about 2 lakh retailers in the Shopx network today, right? Typically, you want to recommend about 20 products to each retailer, what they should buy.
Right.
Okay.
Got it.
Uh, a human way of making that decision would be to have some category managers make that choice, make that decision. If you make the same decisions using AI, and we do that, we can actually make 2 lakh into 20, right? So about 4 million decisions a day.
A day.
Because in theory, uh, every retailer carries and has a different micro market, carries different type of products.
Yeah.
You've
True.
seen this, right? Like you move 50 meters away, a different store's merchandise can be at least partially different from the other store.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's no way we can make these 4 million decisions manually.
Mm.
What ends up happening is that non-AI systems tend to be one size fits all,
Mm.
right? Because maybe they can make 400 decisions a day, and therefore every retailer is served in a suboptimal fashion.
Mm.
With AI, you can be extremely granular. Every retailer gets what they want and what
Mm.
optimizes their business. I would extend the same to international. I think that, I'm sure that a retailer in Indonesia needs to carry. a different type of merchandise, right?
Yeah.
And what you need is that AI layer, which is smart enough to make that localization decisions.
Mm.
And the good thing with India is that I would say that Madhya Pradesh and Karnataka are like like different countries, right?
Yeah.
So the tech we build for a diverse country like India is
Yeah.
actually automatically, if you do it smartly,
Mm.
built for internationalization, right?
Yeah, that's
If
actually
it
true.
comes
We're
from
like we're like many countries wrapped into
many
one country in a
countries, many
sense. Yeah.
countries. So
Yeah.
I think if you do the architecting in an abstracted way,
Mm.
you can actually use the same AI systems to go global, right?
Yeah.
That's what we hope to do.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Amit. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here today. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. You can follow all our updates on our website and social channels. We'll be back very soon with another exciting story. Until then, stay safe and stay connected.